Sunday, 9:47 at night. You are 8 years old. You are lying in a twin bed with a comforter that has dinosaurs on it, and through the wall, through the thin drywall that separates your bedroom from the kitchen, you can hear them again. It starts with the envelope. It always starts with the envelope. Your mother opens something from the stack on the counter, and her voice changes. Not louder, not yet, just tighter, like a wire being pulled from both ends. Then your father says something quiet, defensive, and then it's not quiet anymore. The number tonight is $341. You don't know what it means. You just know that $341 made your mother's voice shake and made your father push his chair back from the table. You are 8 years old, and you have already learned something that no one sat you down to teach. Money is the thing that makes the people you love become people you don't recognize. You pull the comforter over your ears. The dinosaurs don't help. They never do. This is not a video about investing. This is a video about what happens to a child who grows up understanding money as a source of violence before ever understanding it as a tool, and what it costs to unlearn that, and what it looks like when you finally do. You are 12. You find a bank statement in the trash, your mother's checking account. The balance is $211.18. You don't know if that's a lot or a little. You ask your friend Jordan at school, casually, how much money his parents have. He says, "I don't know. A lot, I think." You never ask again. You learn to read the house the way animals read weather. If the bills are stacked neatly, it's a good week. If they're spread across the table, face down, it's not. If your mother is on the phone with a voice that's too polite, too controlled, she's talking to a creditor. You are 12 and you know the word creditor. You don't know what an index fund is. You don't know what a Roth IRA is. But you know what a final notice looks like. You know the specific shade of anxiety in your father's jaw on the 28th of every month. You know that Sunday night is when the math gets done, and the math always hurts someone. You are 16. You get your first job. $11.25 an hour stocking shelves at a hardware store 3 nights a week. Your first paycheck is $387.40 after taxes. You hold it in your hand and feel something you cannot name: power, safety, a wall between you and Sunday night. You put $200 in a savings account. You do not tell anyone. Not your parents, not your friends. The savings account is a secret the way some people keep journals. It is the place where you are building a version of yourself that doesn't flinch when an envelope arrives. By 17, you have $2,100 saved. You check the balance every day, not from anxiety, from reassurance. The number is a pulse. As long as it's there, you are not them. You are not Sunday night. You are something else. Something that has a cushion between itself and disaster. You are 22, first real job, $52,000 a year. Your take-home is $1,680 per paycheck, and $800 of it goes into a high-yield savings account before you pay for anything that isn't rent or food. Your friends go to bars on Friday. You go sometimes. You order one drink. You nurse it. You calculate the cost of the evening in your head while someone is telling you a story. You are present and absent at the same time. They spend freely because money was never a weapon in their house. For you, and every dollar spent is a small death. Every dollar saved is a brick in a wall you've been building since you were 8 years old, in a dinosaur comforter, listening to your parents become strangers over $341. You grew up in financial trauma, and the overcorrection is its own trap. You are 24. You have $18,400 in savings, no debt, no subscriptions you don't use, no impulse purchases. Your credit score is 761. By every metric, you are winning, and you are miserable. Not dramatically miserable, functionally miserable. The way a person is miserable when they've optimized their life for safety and forgotten that safety is not the same thing as living. Your girlfriend asks why you won't go on the trip. It's $1,200. You have $18,000 in savings. The math makes sense. The math has always made sense. But when she says the number, $1,200, something in your chest contracts. The same contraction you felt at 8 years old when your mother's voice changed over an envelope. You say maybe next month. She looks at you the way someone looks when they're starting to understand something they wish they didn't. You are not cheap. You are afraid. And the fear is wearing a costume called responsibility. A Thursday night. You are 26. You're sitting alone in your apartment. The rent is paid. The savings account holds $31,200, more than a year of expenses. You don't need that much buffer. You know that. You keep it anyway. You have started investing $400 a month into a total market index fund. You enrolled in your company's 401k the same month. The brokerage account shows $9,600. Everything is pointed in the right direction. And you are sitting at your kitchen table at 9:30 on a Thursday night, and you realize you are doing the same thing your parents did. You are sitting at a table in a kitchen at night, staring at numbers. The only difference is that your numbers are positive. The ritual is the same. The obsession is the same. The relationship with money is still the first relationship, still the loudest one in the room. You haven't become your parents. You've become their mirror image. They spent from chaos. You save from fear. The dysfunction just flipped polarity. And hoarding money out of terror and spending money out of avoidance are the same disease with different symptoms. Both are about control. Both are about a child who once had none. You are 28. You start therapy. Not because something broke, because you're tired of flinching. The therapist asks you when you first associated money with danger. You say 8. She asks what you'd do with $1,200 if it couldn't hurt you. You don't have an answer. She says that's where the work starts. Over 6 months, something shifts. Not in the spreadsheet, in the body. You take the trip, not the same one, a different one. $1,400 for a week somewhere warm. You feel the contraction in your chest when you book it. You book it anyway. You do not check your savings account for 3 days while you're gone. This is the hardest thing you've ever done. Harder than saving $31,000. Harder than building a budget from nothing. Learning to spend without shame when your whole nervous system was wired for scarcity. You are 30. Your brokerage account holds $47,000. The 401k you opened at 26 holds $38,400. Total invested $85,400. The savings account holds $22,000. You lowered it intentionally. 6 months of expenses, not 12. The difference went into investments that compound. You know the difference now between safety and growth. Safety is the emergency fund. Growth is everything above it. You no longer confuse the two. You call your mother on a Sunday afternoon. She's 61. She's still working. You ask her, carefully, how much she owes on the medical bill from March. She's quiet for a long time. $4,200, she says. You transfer it that evening. You don't feel heroic. You feel like a cycle broke, not with a dramatic snap, with a quiet click, like a door that's been stuck for 20 years finally opening because someone oiled the hinge from the other side. Your father calls the next day. He doesn't say thank you. He says, "You didn't have to do that." And the way he says it is the closest thing to an apology you will ever receive for every Sunday night, for every scraped chair, for every envelope that turned the kitchen into a courtroom. You didn't have to do that, but you could. That's the difference. That's the whole difference. And for 1 second, you are 8 years old again, standing in the hallway, hand on the doorframe, listening. But the kitchen is quiet, the table is empty, the envelope is gone. You blink. You are 30 again. And the silence on the other end of the phone is not tension. It's peace. The first peace that house has ever produced on a Sunday. You are 32. You buy a house. Down payment, $64,000. Mortgage, $1,840 a month. You can afford it without stress. Not because you make extraordinary money, because you spent a decade building the space between yourself and the edge. The edge where one bill, one envelope, one Sunday night math session could collapse everything. You are no longer near that edge. And for the first time, the distance doesn't feel like fear. It feels like freedom, the actual kind, not the absence of danger, the presence of choice. The first piece of mail that arrives at your new address is a utility bill. You open it standing at the counter. Your hands shake, just for a second, just enough to notice. Old wiring. You look at the number, and it's fine. You put it down on the table and walk away. You don't think about it again until Wednesday. Your kitchen has an overhead light, the same kind your parents had, the same warm yellow circle on the same kind of table. But on Sunday nights, this table has dinner plates, not bills. It has a glass of wine, not a stack of envelopes. It has conversation, not calculation. You are 32 years old, and you are sitting in a kitchen on a Sunday night, and nobody is fighting, nobody's voice is tightening, nobody is pushing back from the table. The number in your checking account is not a threat. It's just a number. And the sound that comes through these walls on a Sunday night is not arithmetic. It's not an envelope being torn open. It's not a chair being pushed back. It's just the low hum of a dishwasher running, and the last few minutes of a show neither of you is really watching. An ordinary Sunday, the kind that costs nothing to survive. You grew up watching your parents fight about money every Sunday night. You spent a decade trying to make sure you'd never be in that kitchen. And then you spent the next decade learning that the opposite of that kitchen isn't a full bank account. It's a Sunday night where money is just money, where it doesn't get to decide who you become. The balance was never the point. The silence was.